Your CPU hits its advertised boost clock for half a second, then the number drops. The chip is cool, the game is running, nothing looks broken, but something underneath that expensive CPU has quietly decided how fast it is allowed to stay. Not the CPU. The motherboard, the part most builders choose after comparing colors, ports, and prices. So what is that board actually doing to earn control over nearly everything inside your PC? And how can a cheap one choke a processor that costs 5 times more? If you like discovering what your PC parts are secretly doing, like and subscribe, because the motherboard has been making decisions behind your back since the first time you press the power button. The board's real job. A motherboard is not one giant component. It is a city. Your CPU, GPU, storage, memory, USB devices, audio, and network connection all live in different neighborhoods. The motherboard builds the roads between them. Some roads run directly into the CPU, others pass through the chipset, the controller beneath a heatsink near the bottom of the board. The chipset handles background traffic, extra USB ports, SATA drives, additional PC slots, audio, sometimes Wi-Fi and networking. Older computers split these jobs between a north bridge and south bridge. Over time, the CPU absorbed memory control and primary graphics lanes. What remained became the modern chipset. But the chipset still speaks to the CPU through one main connection. Intel calls it DMI. AMD uses a similar link, and every device connected through the chipset shares it. Your extra SSD does not always get a private highway. Neither does every USB device or expansion card. They can all squeeze through the same gate. Even the board itself is layered, like invisible road maps. Some layers carry data, others carry power or ground. Budget boards often use fewer layers. Higher-end boards use more, giving engineers room to separate signals and keep high-speed connections stable. The motherboard is not merely holding your parts together, it is deciding how cleanly they communicate, powering the CPU, the VRM. Your power supply sends 12 volts toward the CPU through the dedicated connector near the top of the board. But the processor cannot use 12 volts directly. It usually wants around 1 volt, plus a huge amount of current that changes almost instantly. One moment, the CPU is barely awake. The next, a game launches and every core starts clawing for power. The voltage regulator module, or VRM, handles that chaos. It steps 12 volts down and constantly adjusts the output. Each phase contains switching hardware, a choke, and capacitors that divide the load and heat. But the number printed on the box can mislead you. A doubler can let one control signal operate 2 phases, allowing an 8-phase design to be advertised as 16 without doubling its real capability. Phase count is only part of the story anyway. A board with fewer strong power stages can outperform one packed with weaker phases. Then heat enters the fight. Run the same hungry CPU on 2 boards, and their VRMs can land tens of degrees apart. Once a weak VRM gets too hot, it protects itself. It cuts back, your CPU loses boost speed, performance drops, no dramatic warning appears. You simply stare at a processor performing worse than every review you watched. The expensive CPU is ready to run. The invisible middle manager underneath it says no. The data superhighway, PCIe lanes. Your GPU looks like it owns the motherboard. It takes the largest slot and may need a support bracket just to stop sagging. But it only works because of the electrical lanes underneath it. PCIe lanes are direct data paths. Your CPU has a limited number. On many mainstream platforms, 16 go to the graphics card, while another 4 serve the fastest M2 drive. Those devices connect directly to the CPU for the fastest route possible. Everything else usually takes the scenic route. Extra M2 slots, SATA controllers, and expansion cards connect through the chipset, sharing that same link. This creates one of the nastiest motherboard traps. You install a second M2 drive. It works, but 2 SATA ports disappear, or an expansion slot drops to fewer lanes. Nothing broke. The board simply moved its limited lanes somewhere else. The trade is buried in the manual, on the page nobody reads until a drive vanishes. The slot itself can also fool you. It may look like a full X16 slot, while only 4 electrical lanes are wired beneath it. The plastic promises size. The copper decides speed. Some boards can split 1x16 connection across multiple devices, but the firmware must support it. Each PCIe generation roughly doubles bandwidth, but every connection still runs as fast as its slowest part. A new CPU cannot force an older chipset or board layout to become newer. The lanes have already been drawn. The clock behind every other clock. Every flashy frequency inside your PC begins with one smaller rhythm. A clock generator produces a base reference clock, commonly around 100 megahertz. Your CPU multiplies it to reach the number shown in monitoring software. A multiplier of 50 turns 100 megahertz into 5 gigahertz. Simple. Until you change the base clock itself. Raise the multiplier, and you mainly change the CPU cores. Raise the base clock, and you may nudge several connected systems at once. CPU frequency, memory, PCIe, storage controllers. That is why older base clock overclocking could make a system behave haunted. The CPU seemed stable, but a drive corrupted data. The graphics card crashed. A USB controller dropped devices. You had not increased one speed. You grabbed the master metronome and told half the orchestra to play faster. Modern platforms isolate more of these clocks, but that freedom still depends on the board. Even overclocking begins with permission from the board. Booting before an operating system exists. You press the power button. Windows is not running. Your SSD has loaded nothing. Yet the motherboard is already interrogating every major component. Its firmware lives on a small flash chip. It identifies the CPU, trains the memory, checks graphics, finds storage, and prepares the system for the operating system. This sequence is post, power on, self-test. When something fails, the board may freeze on the exact step that could not finish. That is why debug lights are labeled CPU, DRAM, VGA, and boot. They are breadcrumbs showing where startup stopped. More expensive boards may use 2-digit codes for a more specific clue. A small battery preserves the clock and firmware settings while the PC is unplugged. When it weakens, the system may forget both. Some boards carry 2 firmware chips, so one can rescue the other after a failed update. Others support BIOS flashback, allowing a firmware update from USB without a working CPU or memory installed. That feature can turn what looks like a dead build into a 5-minute repair. Before Windows can load or crash, the motherboard has already built the stage beneath it, the physical reality nobody sees. The motherboard looks flat. Electrically, it is anything but. Copper traces snake through several layers, carrying signals that must arrive with absurd precision. Memory paths from the CPU to each RAM slot are measured and matched, so related signals arrive almost together. At those speeds, a trace is not just a wire. Its width, spacing, and length affect the signal. Engineers control impedance so it arrives cleanly instead of bouncing or causing interference. This is why the same memory kit can behave perfectly on one board and become unstable on another. The RAM did not become worse. The route changed. Board layout, firmware, and signal quality changed with it. That is also why a motherboard's memory compatibility list matters. A missing kit may simply be untested, but at high memory speeds, tiny differences stop being tiny. Then there is the physical placement of the VRM. A board can advertise powerful components, but poor cooling can make those ratings meaningless. Your case airflow matters. The cooler position matters. Even the graphics card can trap hot air around the power stages. A motherboard is not a spreadsheet brought to life. It is fighting heat, distance, interference, and limited space every second your PC runs. Pick a side. So pick a side. Would you rather discover that a cheap motherboard is holding back your expensive CPU after the build is finished, or spend more time checking the board before buying everything around it? Because nobody enjoys learning that the least exciting box stopped an expensive processor from stretching its legs. What the motherboard decides. You do not need to memorize every controller, lane, phase, and firmware code. You need to check 3 things. Look beyond the advertised phase count. Check the power stage rating, VRM heatsinks, and sustained load testing. Read the lane sharing table. Find which M2 slots disable SATA ports or reduce expansion slot bandwidth. Check the chipset. Confirm which PCIe generation it supports, and which devices connect directly to the CPU. Those 3 checks tell you more than a wall of RGB armor and gaming logos ever will. Because the motherboard does not make your games prettier, it does not appear in benchmark screenshots. It has no fans screaming for attention and almost no bragging rights. Yet it decides whether your CPU can hold its speed. It decides which drives can run together. It decides how cleanly your memory communicates, and whether a new processor works at all. The quietest part of your build is the part deciding how far everything else gets to go. If this breakdown was useful, give it a like, subscribe for more deep dive tech content, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video.